How do we bridge the widening gap between workplace productivity and the fast-evolving world of modern technology? Well, on today's episode, I'm joined by Nathan Thomas, Director of Innovation at Ricoh Europe. And we're going to explore just that and so much more, because in a world where AI, hybrid working and automation are all continuing to reshape expectations, many organisations are still falling behind, not due to a lack of tools, but due to a hesitation to rethink workplace culture. What does that mean? How are they going to change their systems? How can they rebuild it from the ground up? So Nathan is going to be bringing with him today a sharp perspective from the front line of product design and innovation at Ricoh, where he's driving a vision far removed from the company's legacy as a printing giant, because he's focused on designing workplace experiences that are smart, integrated, and most importantly, human first. So I want to learn more about the new research that reveals how countries like Spain are outperforming the UK and Ireland in productivity, and why culture and mindset are often more powerful than software updates. And we'll also discuss how businesses are navigating AI adoption, sometimes hesitantly, and what it really means to have a usable strategic tech stack in today's office environment. And not only that, Nathan is also going to be sharing how Ricoh is positioning itself not just to meet companies where they are, but to build where they'll be working next. So, are we doing enough to modernise how we work? Are you doing enough to modernise how you work? Or are outdated mindsets holding us back from unlocking real productivity gains? And on that note, it's time for me to officially introduce you to today's guest. So thank you for joining me on the show today, Nathan. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yes. Hi, Neil. So I am the Director of Innovation for Ricoh Europe. My job really, I guess, is to try and turn all of the challenges in workplace at the moment into a human-centered, tech-enabled ecosystem. So it's trying to think outside the box, which sounds a little bit cliche, but really is trying to think a little bit differently and come up with some really great ideas.
And I would imagine being the Director of Innovation, especially when you're working with workplace technology, is an incredibly exciting space at the moment, because it feels like everything is up for grabs. We're talking about people working alongside AI agents. We've got hybrid working, distributed teams. So tell me about that role of innovation and workplace technology.
Yeah, it's insane right now. I think there's a clear gap in the market for someone who can really solve true challenges. There are a lot of small point solutions out there that solve very specific problems, and there's no problem with that. But the more you see is this conversion of blended technology. Nothing's going to take you 100% of the way there. So focusing on like an ecosystem and a platform that can help your customers truly solve real problems. And I'm from a kind of human-centric design background, so it's not just putting in tech for the sake of tech. I really want to enable people to get on and do the jobs that they want to come to work to do. And I get asked anything from how do we get more people in? How do we enable people once they're in? How do we build a culture of work and bring people together and make them happy? Because we know that making people happy in the workplace ends up keeping retention and better productivity. So when I started doing the tech piece, I really thought it was building tech. And so what I really realized was it was helping people build culture, processes, automate, and actually navigate a complex world of technology that's out there.
And I'm glad you mentioned you don't want to be putting tech in for tech's sake. 'Cause I think 2 years ago, the whole world went crazy for AI, just put it all in there, and then now realizing they haven't got a return on investment on some of their projects because they went tech first, not problem first. And as good as AI is, of course, if the company culture doesn't change to adapt with it and welcome it, and everybody understands what value is in it for them, then there's also going to run into problems. And one of the reasons I was excited to get you on today was your latest research also points to some pretty stark contrasts in productivity, not just here in the UK, but right across Europe. So can you walk me through some of the headline findings and what surprised you most from that?
Yeah, and whether it's a surprise or not, I'm not too sure. But what we found in here was that Spain was the most productive out of our study. So the study was on, I think, around 7,000 workers and a couple of thousand leaders. And we were really trying to figure out what makes this productive, great workplace. And the fact that Spain were on top, maybe some countries always feel that they're the best and they're not necessarily the best. But if you look into why Spain might be one of the most productive places in Europe, I think it's a lot around what they put into the culture overall. I was starting to dig a little bit deeper into some of how Spain works, and they've done a lot around supporting a max working week legally. They've been participating in culture experiments like the 4-day working week and those kind of things. And I think it's the cultural aspects that makes a big difference to the overall movement in Spain. But of course, the technology was what we found in the study was a big blocker in enabling people to actually be productive at work.
Well, I'll say surprises. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't. I suppose it depends where you're listening to this podcast today. But the UK and Ireland in particular are lagging behind in workplace productivity. So from your perspective, how much of that gap is directly tied to outdated or inadequate workplace tech, or is it something else? What are you seeing here?
I think there's a lot of tech. There's a lot of UK customers we have and Ireland, and I think there's this mindset in the UK, being from the UK, it's easy to see that we are really good at what we do and we're always leaders. But I think there's a point where businesses in the UK have paused a little bit and not necessarily caught up with the times or innovated as much as they could have innovated. And there's also this cultural piece holding us back a little bit. And I think with the overall cultural changes that we haven't made in the UK, like it sounds that Spain have really been pushing forward with, I do think that's contributing to everything because we haven't got the mindset of adopting technology and pushing it forward and actually helping people be more productive at work or even support families. There's this bit of a loss I see in helping families be productive at work, and because it's not that simple with childcare needs and everything else. If you don't have those right foundations, I don't think you'll ever get to the point that you're accelerating forward.
Yeah, completely agree with you. And another thing that stood out from the findings is a significant portion of employees have said that they're frustrated by the lack of automation tools in their working environment. And we're both talking in the West Midlands today. I've heard from a few different businesses in the West Midlands of frustrated employees that have said, hey, generative AI came along and the first thing that they did was ban it. And I'm 3 or 4 instances of that. But why do you think businesses are still hesitant to adopt things like AI and automation at scale?
I think it's fear. There's a lot of misinformation around what AI is. And there's also, I think there's an overall lack of understanding. I'm the kind of person that learns continuously no matter what. And I guess it's kind of my job to do that as well. But I am obsessed with technology. So I've been following AI as long as AI has been around. So I feel like I know a lot about it. But if you go to the general person in a workplace, I really notice a lack of information. Maybe they know what's been commercially released. They see OpenAI and GPT and think that's just what AI is. And they're actually not really thinking deeply about all of the foundational layers of AI, the data, the governance that goes into actually enabling these tools to be tools. And I think the immediate reaction is to just turn it off because it sounds like you're going to leak information here or do this there. I think in reality, it means that people will be driven into using personal AI rather than company AI, rather than actually not using it at all. And I'm a heavy user, and I encourage my team to be heavy users as much as possible. Because if you truly utilize AI correctly, you can just get rid of some of those mundane tasks and searching through spreadsheets or just doing things you don't want to do, or just kind of augmenting you as a human and enabling you to be more productive and get onto more valuable work that you want to be doing as a human.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, more value as a human. And there is an increasing narrative that AI and automation will actually free people up from some of the mundane, repetitive tasks, staring at spreadsheets and all that repetitive stuff, and free people up to focus on more fulfilling work, more value add work, instead of behaving like a robot in many ways by just doing those robotic tasks every day. So based on your research, though, are we seeing that materialize, or is there still a disconnect based on fear of change or something else?
Well, I saw in the release that we did and the overall research that it was only around 28% of UK employees felt that they had the tools to collaborate frictionlessly. And I think based on that, we're not not quite there, and we're not enabling people to do what they want to do and how they need to be able to work. Um, I think there's a long way to go, but I think it's an education standpoint that we need to take here rather than just a throw the tech in, as I was saying earlier on. I've really noticed a lack of hiring AI roles in companies. And it's a huge problem when you might hire a head of data governance and your CIO has all of these roles in to help with enterprise applications and enterprise security. Whilst we're not hiring specific AI experts in these areas, I don't think there'll ever be a strategy to really move these things forward at pace in a secure way. Because I think there's more that a company needs to do in terms of technological ownership of AI, not just taking something off the shelf and just plugging it into their ecosystem. I meet a lot of people that say, "Oh, we're just going to use Copilot and throw Copilot in," and then they do a POC and they realize that Copilot knows nothing about their business and doesn't work. And I go, "What a surprise! You can't just put Copilot in and call that an AI strategy."
Yeah, so true. And it's data that brings that AI to life. And so many businesses have so many different data silos, and each department is so protective of that data. And that is actually a conversation for an episode on its own there. But your data shows that many businesses are struggling with system integration. And based on what I just said, that's probably of no surprise. But what kind of guidance or strategies should companies be looking for when attempting to modernize their workflows? Any tips or advice or anything that you're seeing around this?
Well, I'm going to be a little bit biased because part of the platform that we offer is to try and solve this problem.
Yeah.
But I think even without our platform, if you focus on finding platforms that get you 80% of the way, that are open and integrated and not closed ecosystems, then you're already on to this journey of being able to enable the technology choices. You need to really focus on that cultural piece. One thing I really noticed is my office here in Birmingham, it's the product engineering teams, design teams, development teams, and we're a close-knit community. There's around 40 people based here. It's not a huge office. But 2 years ago, we took the decision to move into a listed building. It's the Runrunner Works. It used to be a nightclub in the 80s, for anyone that remembers the Runrunner Works in the 80s. And it's where Duran Duran were founded. So there's a lot of history here. And we closed the office a few weeks ago for 2 weeks, and there was complete uproar. People couldn't imagine working from home for 2 weeks straight without coming in and meeting their colleagues. And what I quickly realized is, although we've got the tech, we've got occupancy sensing and automation here, everything that makes your workplace a little bit better, I think a huge part of it was the fact that people are adopting that technology and working together in a collaborative environment that is enabled to be like that by the culture. And if you're able to get the culture right, everything else will start to fall in place. But then you need to have the technology strategy to be able to do it, which is where the 80% that I was talking around of trying to get something that does most of what you're trying to solve, but then piecing it together. I know that people aren't scared of using multiple apps, but those multiple apps need to converge somewhere in some place to get key focus on what you need to do for the day, which is where your AI strategy can really help. I've seen examples where employees of Anthropic, if they'll put videos on where they use Claude to start their day, It's connected into their Google calendars and their Gmail. So they're just saying, what's top of mind today? What need to do and what do they need to be focused on? Now, of course, they've got an advantage of being an AI company making these AI models, but just looking at how someone utilizes AI in this kind of environment and give you the picture of what you should be able to strive to be doing in your own workplace.
And you mentioned the Ricoh platform there. And one of the things I try and do every day on this podcast is bust a few myths and misconceptions. And there will be people listening around the world that when they hear the name Ricoh, when they think about the brand, they automatically think about MFDs, those multifunctional devices, rather than a platform. So let's just bust a few misconceptions there. Tell me more about the platform.
Yeah, so actually, people get really surprised when I say I work at Ricoh, and I do nothing to do with print. I do nothing to do with print. I do nothing to do with digital cameras, which is the other one that some people might hear. And actually, I'm in the workplace experience team. So we focus on trying to solve all workplace experience problems, whether that's process automations that we do, whether that's space booking and reservations, visitor management, the traditional kind of workplace pieces. We're doing a lot in AI. We're doing a lot in wearable technology and sensor technology and partnerships. So we do everything from enabling you to manage a tightly resourced building or book your rooms better or auto cancel them when they're not in use, these productivity hacks. And that's our core focus. We do this globally. So we utilize our legacy as Ricoh. I think it's 86 years now of supply chains, people, relationships. And we really try to focus on bringing this workplace of tomorrow together to enable the future of workplace. That's the goal.
Fantastic. And I would imagine you've seen a lot of attitudes change throughout the years from looking at you guys for those printers kind of thing to moving away from printers to being more increased productivity and a role. So you kind of like just took the baton here, right, and ran with it. Is there anything else you can share about that, just for people listening that may be thinking, oh, I wonder how they might be able to help me with a particular problem? Is there anything you can share around that?
Yeah. So if you're looking for overall managing of your workplace, whether that's, we're huge in AV. People don't know that we're the third largest AV supplier in the world. So, and it always baffles me when I find that out, those kind of pieces of information out, because I'm like, oh, are we that big? So, if you're looking to manage large estates of AV, but also have the platform that can do the desk booking and the room booking on top of that, this blended technology choice that we've made here with our platform. So we can solve all of the challenges together. You can find that it's Ricoh Spaces is the platform so if you Google Ricoh Spaces, you'll find it, and you'll find everything that we do around the workplace and workplace experience. And then if you reach out to me, I can show you some of the R&D, and we'll tell you where we're going in the future, because I think there's a point now in the workplace where we are, but I really want to meet users where they're going to be, not where they are today. And I truly think that Ricoh has a unique position to build the future of workplace, because we're a hardware provider and a software and technology company. I think we have the blend of being able to do both. And because we operate all over the world with physical people in those locations from the print business who can service, install, and maintain, I think we can solve the future of workplace, or at least play a big part in doing it.
And I will add a link to Ricoh Spaces for people listening to find out more on anything that we discussed there. And of course, back to your report there, again, Spain leading in productivity. So I've got to ask, what lessons, if any, can maybe UK-based leaders listening take from how Spanish companies are equipping their employees? What are they doing differently?
I think they're just moving faster. Yeah. So it comes back to the same point I'm laboring. I think it's culture moving quite faster, having those rights to disconnects, those 4-day working week examples, focusing on well-being and just focusing on helping people be more productive in the workplace. I think if you have the overall attitude shift, and maybe a little bit less fear and more embracing, then you'll move forward fast. Maybe the weather helps. I'm not too sure.
Yes, maybe it'll play a small part in that too. But as we look ahead, as I said at the very beginning of our conversation, it feels like so much is up for grabs now. The way that we work is completely changing. So looking ahead, what do you see, or where do you see Ricoh helping in playing in helping organizations close that productivity gap that we've talked about today, especially as hybrid working, AI adoption, it all continues to evolve. So much has changed in the last 2 years. I would imagine it's going to speed up even more over the next 2 years. So where do you see Ricoh playing in this, or what role do you see Ricoh playing in this?
I want to be as forward thinking as possible and not leave anything to chance. People are often dismissive of how AI will be disruptive and think, oh, maybe this or maybe that. I don't know if you saw VO3 last week,
Yeah.
but I've showed some of the guys here today and they almost couldn't believe that it was AI. So that pace of change is coming and we need to be thinking forward as a company of how we're going to enable change to be adopted in the next 3 to 5 years. One thing I love working at Ricoh is because we're a Japanese headquartered company, we often think in 3 to 5 years life cycles, whereas some companies may be looking at the next quarter or the next year. We're really thinking about where we're going to be in the future. This is enabling us to look at R&D technology, which is nowhere near ready for release, but we're bringing to Birmingham. So Neil, if you want to come to Birmingham, you can play with some of the R&D that we're doing. And it's stuff that people will openly come to me and say, this is insane. I don't see where this is going to fit into the workplace. But that's where we want to be, is where people don't really understand it yet. And then maybe in a year's time, they'll go, thank God you did that, because this is exactly what we need now. Not where they are now, where they are going to be. And I think trying to have this human-centric approach in the workplace, it's completely open right now. There's no clear winner. There's lots of different players in the area. There's lots of legacy companies. There's lots of IBM software out there, which is super legacy. And then there's lots of really forward-thinking technology. There's nothing that does everything. And I think if we can listen to people in workplaces, we can do our own research. We can work with companies that we've already got 1.4 million customers, for example. So we have relationships with people that are going back years and years, meaning that we're able to go into these companies and just observe, talk to them and just say, tell me about how you work. Show me what you do. Let me speak to your employees. If we can get those core design principles in place, I think we can do something special.
Oh, I love that. And what I will do, I'm going to take you up on that offer. And later this year, I'll come to your office. I'll have a look at the R&D stuff. Maybe we can record another conversation in person later in the year. And you mentioned the big announcement last week. I think there was two really big ones, really. There was the Google thing and also the fact that they're introducing a separate tab for search, which is going to be more AI search, disrupting their own model that runs on advertising. And I think the whole world of how we search for information is going to be completely changed in the next few years. And then, of course, OpenAI buying Johnny Ive's company as well for like $6 billion and almost hinting that, hey, in the future, we're not going to be staring at screens. We're not going to have a phone. It's going to be more of an AI agent that we're talking to. We don't need to be looking at a screen and scrolling and asking. So much up for grabs there. Did that excite you when you heard all that news all in 1 week?
It did actually. And this is the kind of stuff that keep telling people are going to come and nobody believes me.
Yeah.
And like, Humane tried it with their pin and everyone dismissed that something like that's not going to work, but it will. Maybe this wasn't the right way of doing it. And if OpenAI are going to do something like that, which it sounds like they might do, I think Meta have rumored doing some kind of wearable necklace as well. There's a few people out there that are trying to do something completely different. But in the same way that no one will really believe Steve Jobs around the iPhone when he released it, there's always going to be this big group of people that can't understand what that next leap is. But I think in the next couple of years, it's going to really hit us.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I still remember, I can still hear his laughter in my head. Microsoft Steve Ballmer's when he picked up that iPhone for the first time and just said, "Who's going to want to use this? There's not even any keys," you know? We all know how that story ended. But of course, one of the ways of keeping up is I think we're all on this state of continuous learning. We need to be learning all the time. We need to be open-minded about what could or could not be coming too. So how or where do you self-educate? How do you keep up to speed with the pace of all this change?
One of the weird things that I do, actually, I've got a few kids, and they only last week, one of them said, "Why do you watch these YouTube videos all the time?" I'm like, "Because I'm learning stuff." So I'll watch the full versions of those conferences rather than the cut versions. I'll watch deep dives into people who build their own examples of tech. I'll watch things like the B1M on YouTube, which is what do they call themselves? The definitive channel for construction. So, it's completely nothing to do with what I actually do, but there's learnings on how people build cities and buildings to how that can be applied to innovation in general and thinking different. So I'll try and watch as much as I can around as many subjects as possible, and I'll do that continuously. I'm not the kind of guy that just watches just TV shows over and over because, yes, there's an entertainment factor, and I do watch TV shows, but if I can spend enough time watching something educational, it's easier to fit it in. Audiobooks is another one. So it was about 2019 where I really started deep diving into audiobooks. And one of the first ones I listened to was How to Be Effing Awesome, to make sure I don't swear. But but that one, right, the way that I think it's Dan, the author, he talks about things like action beats perfection, and moving forward, even if it's not perfect, and continuously iterating, bringing people with you, bringing a team of people with you, and just going for it, really. And it was at that point that I realized that not everything I do is going to be anywhere near perfect. But if I just do it and keep moving forward, then hopefully I'll progress with the ideas. We'll find some hidden gems in there. And if I build the team of people around me that can support and build and think differently, then maybe we can make a difference. So I think consume as much as you possibly can, and also try as much as you can. I still code myself. It's more vibe coding, as they call it these days. But if you don't do that, then you'll never truly understand the technology down to its component parts. I think the more you understand about something, the easier it is for you to articulate yourself, which is why I read everything from building construction to marketing to sales, and then my actual role in terms of building technology.
Yeah, I've always said that version 1 is always better than version none. Probably the best antidote to analysis paralysis as well, which we see in so many big organizations. And for anybody listening, wanting to dig a little bit deeper on some of the things that you talked about there, from blended technology to Ricoh Spaces, I think it was as well that you mentioned, where would you like to point everyone listening if they want to find out more information?
If you want to find out more, you can just Google Ricoh, and then you can find the Ricoh Europe site. We've got our Ricoh Spaces site. And for anyone really interested in some of the R&D, there's a website called 3l.ricoh. And there you'll find some of the innovative items that the team in Japan are working on, and the overall concept of the future of work as well.
Awesome. Well, I'll have links to all of those that you've just mentioned and the social channels as well. But other than that, just thank you for shining a light on this and showing that there's so much more to Ricoh than many may have perceived before listening to this. So I urge everyone listening to check that out. But more than anything, thank you for joining me today. And next time we'll meet in person at your R&D place. But thanks again.
Thanks, Neil.
So what can we learn from countries that are already moving the productivity needle forward? And what is it that's stopping others from doing the same? I think my conversation with Nathan today gave us a grounded look at some of that friction between outdated systems and future-ready thinking. And he highlighted how workplace innovation is no longer just about plugging in the latest tool, but it's more about designing an ecosystem that supports people in a meaningful and adaptable way. And the Ricoh Spaces platform is clearly part of a much bigger shift within Ricoh itself too, moving them away from being seen as just a traditional office supplier and towards being a business enabler of smart, agile and human-focused workplaces. And I think that was brought to life by Nathan's emphasis on culture, collaboration and continuous learning. They're just a few of the things that stood out to me, especially when we were discussing AI's role in reshaping what's possible at work. So, is your organisation wrestling with fragmented tech? Are you still hesitant to adopt AI or find yourself struggling to retain staff in a hybrid working world? There was so much to unpack from today's episode. I mean, Nathan reminded us of the power of curiosity, consuming diverse knowledge from construction documentaries to deep tech dives as a way to fuel better thinking and better outcomes. But over to you. Are you ready to rethink workplace innovation from the inside out, from the ground up? And what is your next move to building the future of work? You've heard from me. You've heard from my guest today. I now want to throw it over to you. techblogwriteroutlook.com, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, TikTok, all the usual places. I'm just at Neil C. Hughes. So let me know your thoughts. But that's it for today. I think I've taken up far too much of your time. I'll be back again soon with another episode. And hopefully I'll speak with you all then. Bye for now.